around the Zoom meeting info. Whenever
There's a phone number.
Yeah, you can access it just by phone. You just won't see everybody.
There's a phone link down.
I've got 7 o'clock here. Sheila, do you mind kicking us off?
No, I don't. I didn't. I was thinking about that because we do sort of do that. So I am here, and I do want to thank. I want to thank anybody. I just want to say I'm Sheila Lyons. I'm the president of the Community Forum, and here we are in a very different type of forum. So you can see although I've been at all of these, and I'm getting distracted by all these other things. Thank you. I'm sorry. I had to stop there for a second because my computer was giving me emails I didn't want to deal with. So thank you. And I hope more people have logged on since I started my introduction. But the Community Forum is always proud and to foster community engagement. And, we've already voted, but this is a good conversation to have. And there's things that if people want to change their mind, there's opportunity here. So we are all going into town meetings, so you will be ready with your questions and information that you need. So with that, I want to give it over to Dan Silverman, who is, we are proud to just promote community participation, engagement, and we need to be involved in our governments. So with that, Dan, I give it to you.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you to the forum for hosting this every year. I think it's really helpful. A couple of things before we start. I want to very quickly just remind people, of what we're going to be looking at as we come to town meeting. There's a 2-page kind of primer on what to expect at the beginning of in the front of your warrant. So I do hope everybody has a chance to read that. The tent company set up the tent today. We will have seating under the tent for probably about 100 people or so. And that assumes that all the chairs are occupied, that everybody comes as a pair. If people come in singles, in order to maintain spacing, obviously we're not going to make the most efficient use of that. So, and we would like to ask people to save that seating for our older, more vulnerable population. So if you're going to come, bring sunscreen, bring a wide hat. The weather right now looks like it's going to cooperate. It's going to be sunny, not too hot, hopefully not too humid, maybe a little wind from the east, which would help keep things cool. But I think we really did luck out in terms of the weather. The other thing, the other thing is that just sort of ground rules for this particular forum. Every time we do one of these things, I like to remind people that the purpose of this is not to debate the articles. We can go through the warrant. This is a chance for you to ask questions and for proponents of the articles to make very brief presentations. And I will ask you to be brief. But this is also a chance for the proponents of articles, for town officials, town staff, to hear what kind of questions might be asked, so that if they're not prepared to answer those questions tonight, they have between now and town meeting to get prepared, so that hopefully by the time we come to town meeting, if these same questions come up, they have the ability to answer them at that time. So with that, I'm going to go through the warrant article by article, and I would ask that you raise your hand if you use the raise your hand function. If you'd like to speak about one of these or have a question about one of these. When we as I said, go back to the town meeting procedures, the way we're going to work at a town meeting is, with the exception of perhaps some of the presenters, I'm going to ask everybody to stay seated, and if they wish to speak and debate, to stand at their seat. We're going to have 4 volunteer microphone wranglers who will bring wireless mic to you on a long boom. They'll be sanitized in between speakers, so that everybody want to try to minimize the amount of moving around in the meeting, so that people can stay socially distanced. Even though we are outdoors, I still think it's going to be good practice, and we're going to ask people to keep their masks on. We can try having people speak with their mask on. If that turns out not to work, just drop your mask briefly. And then votes, again, a little bit different. We're not going to do any voice votes. All votes will be taken by a show of voter cards. The Senior Center has provided us with some fluorescent sheets of paper. Each voter, when they check in, will get a numbered sheet of paper, and we're just going to vote by holding up, to indicate whether you're in favor or opposed to the article. As we go through the meeting, voice votes are just going to be too difficult to try to get a good sense of in an outdoor setting. And I'm hoping that with a show of cards on most of the articles, it'll be pretty obvious whether they passed or not. And if it's not obvious to me and to all the rest of the voters in attendance, then we'll go ahead and we'll count the votes. All right. So the first article, as always, according to our charter, is the operating budget. I don't know if either the select board or the town administrator wants to make any general comments on the operating budget. Is there anything? That the operating budget is delineated as a line item budget in the Appendix A, which starts on page 32. Past practice has been, and it will be this time, that I'll go through the budget either page by page or section by section. And if anyone wants to ask any questions or make any amendments, we will deal with those, and then we'll come back and take one vote on the omnibus budget as a whole. Any questions? I don't see any raised hands. Is there anything in the chat, Courtney? Oh, I guess not. Okay.
Nope, nothing here.
Nothing here. Article 2 is the capital budget, and the capital budget is structured a little bit differently here. Instead of one capital budget, which includes all of the capital items, it's been broken out into a series of articles, as you see. The first one is the debt service, and this is to pay the indebtedness on capital items which the town has already committed from past town meetings. That's pretty straightforward. On the other ones, moving forward from that, the election yesterday, there were 10 questions. These relate to 10 of the articles in the capital budget, and one of them is actually not a capital project, but a new hire proposal. And 6 out of 10 of those passed. Town meeting still needs to act on them. And I probably should say a word here for the benefit of the voters watching why the election took place before town meeting, which is not our normal practice. What happened was, as the spring progressed and as it became obvious that towns were not going to be able to necessarily complete action on their budgets before the end of the last fiscal year, before July 1st, the legislature passed special legislation allowing towns to go into the new fiscal year without a budget, and they're allowed to spend no less than 1/12 of the prior year's budget in subsequent months, and that's the way the town has been operating since the beginning of the new fiscal year. However, there's another section of state law which requires that any election that has to act on contingent articles that were passed at an annual town meeting has to take place no later than September 15th. And the legislature did not give any relief to towns on that, whether it was an oversight, whether they just don't sometimes get the way towns operate, because there was that mass general law restriction that the election had to take place by September 15th. Once we had decided on the date for town meeting, the town clerk felt that she had to schedule the election. She really didn't have any choice as to when we schedule election. I know she talked to town council, and town council said, no, you've got to get the election done before the 15th. So that's why we ended up with the election before the town meeting. But I think voters did a good job of educating themselves. I know that proponents of some of the articles spent a lot of time between Zoom calls and between presentations and so forth to try to educate the voters. And I think the results of the election show that people were paying attention, that they just weren't kind of casting a knee-jerk vote based on not enough information. Hopefully we don't get into that situation again. But so the bottom line is that 6 out of the 10 proposals that were on the ballot are still before town meeting. Actually, all 10 of them rightfully are, but my expectation is that the select board is going to move to indefinitely postpone the 4 that didn't pass at town meeting. That's a decision that I assume they'll make at their meeting tomorrow. The select board is meeting tomorrow. But those things that did pass at the ballot still need a vote from town meeting. And on most of these, they're borrowing articles. They will need a 2/3 vote. So starting with the Shellfish Department pickup truck, that was one that did not pass, if I'm correct. So I'm assuming that will likely be indefinitely postponed.
Do you want me to pull up the unofficial results, Dan?
If you want, if we can do that if people have their work in front of them, sure. Why don't you do that, and we can see. Appreciate everybody's patience. The technology it's good, but it's not great. This is why I didn't want to try to do a virtual town meeting. I think it would have been a disaster.
Yeah. So the Shellfish pickup truck was not on the ballot. These are the ones that were.
I'm sorry. Okay, you're right. The Shellfish. Okay, so that's just a straight request. There's no borrowing. So right. that's still to be acted on. Ryan, I see you have your hand up.
This actually, the Shellfish constable, when we voted on this, she said that that basically that they felt that they could go another year, and so I think we actually voted not to insert this. In addition, I think we voted not to insert it into the warrant.
Well, it's there now, and the warrant was posted with it in it, so we are going to have to take action on it. If the select board wants to move for indefinite postponement, that's their prerogative. But normally I look to someone to make a positive motion first, unless there's agreement between the proponent and the select board to move for indefinite postponement. That's something maybe we can talk about at the select board meeting tomorrow. But it is on the warrant, so the town will have to take action on it one way or another. Maybe Nancy can weigh in on that at tomorrow's meeting. Article 2C, that was one of the ones that did not pass at the town election. So again, I assume that will be moved for indefinite postponement. That's true for Article 2D as well. Article 2E is to replace some fire and rescue equipment on the forestry truck. Chief Pauly, do you want to say something briefly on that?
Yeah, thank you, Dan. This is a basic replacement. The forestry truck itself is in good condition. The skid tank, the pump, the foam unit has never worked well since day one. It was a good attempt to put something together. We tried to replace this. We wanted to replace this last year for $40,000, and I, at that time, decided to forego it for another year, given all the other items that we were facing as a community. So this is just a basic new skid tank, pump, and again, foam unit and some cabinetry on an existing vehicle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief on this? So again, this article is going to propose borrowing, so it will require a 2/3 vote. Article 2F is to replace some fire and rescue equipment. Again, Chief Pauly.
Again, real briefly, Dan, thank you. We're asking for $80,000 to replace all the automatic defibrillators, the AEDs. We also need to put some intravenous pumps per state requirement for the paramedics to use on the ambulances. Some tactical EMS gear, as we're forming a joint effort with all the Cape Fire Departments. If there's a difficult situation, active shooter, mutual aid, support each other. And then a UTV, which will allow us to assist the beach department with beach rescues and also woodland rescues. So that's what that's about.
All right, thank you. Again, any questions for the Chief on that? And again, this is a borrowing article. The debt exclusion vote was approved at town meeting, but it still will need a 2/3 vote. I'm sorry, at the election, it will still require a 2/3 vote at the town meeting. Article 2G was withdrawn before the warrant was printed. Just by way of information, Mr. Hort, as he was preparing this warrant, decided not to try to renumber all of the articles, given that the FinCom had already considered them with the numbers associated with them. So that's why he felt it was easier to just leave the numbers as the draft warrant had been created. So that's why you see the numbering system as it was. Article 2H, the replacement of the backhoe. Again, that did not pass at the ballot yesterday. So my assumption is that the select board will move for indefinite postponement on that. My understanding is that the DPW director has agreed that that can wait until the spring. The same is true of Article 2J to replace the guard shack. Again, failed at the ballot and will be likely indefinitely postponed. The beach bathrooms, that's a straight vote, a majority vote. That's still before the voters. Any questions on that, or anyone would like to speak to that? Is that within the DPW's purview or Suzanne's? I'm not seeing any hands up on that. I think it's fairly straightforward what it's proposing. I don't see any questions. Anything in the chat, Courtney, on that?
Nothing here.
Does anyone wish to speak to it? All right, I'm not seeing that, so we'll move along. The Nauset Regional School District capital improvements. Just a quick note on that. Those of you who go over the warrant with a fine-tooth comb may notice that in the appendix, that lists all the capital projects. This was listed at $71,000 even. The actual figure is the correct one is $79.96. It's a $4 difference, and that I assume was just that 71 might have been a placeholder. So don't be concerned about that. The vote that's being requested. This, just for the sake of clarity, this is not the major Nauset school rebuilding project that's been talked about quite a bit. This is just I believe the standard more minor capital improvements that the Nauset school regional school includes within their budget. So this is just a raise and appropriate and a majority vote required. Questions, Ryan? Do you have a question on this?
The only question I have regarding this is the Nauset schools switched to, or the Nauset High School has switched to entirely remote for the upcoming school year. And I'm wondering if, I don't know, it's came at a late notice, only within the last week did they notify that it was switching to remote. So I don't know. I'm just wondering about the funds for this.
I don't know if there's anybody
Are you wondering where the funds come from? It's from school choice. This is where I believe it comes from, the 13%. Let me find the attachment. Let's see. Oh, that's not gonna work.
I'm assuming this is for not just one school, but maybe for a number of their different facilities.
Let's see. Wellfleet share 13%. It's from this number, even though that's not the same one up there, but that's what it's from. I confirmed it with our town accountant. It's comes from that, and I have the information if you'd like me to send it to you, Ryan.
So will this will be done as a transfer, not as a raise and appropriate?
Fred McGee is on. Hang on.
Fred, can you elucidate? Fred? You're muted, Fred.
Okay.
There you go.
Wait. There's 20 places to unmute yourself. Anyway, I'm the school liaison for the FinCom, so I talk to Tom and Mary Beth pretty regularly. My understanding from when we vetted these budgets was that most of the money that's in this article was aimed at the middle school, had very little to do with the high school, because the assumption was that they were going to be getting going with the high school renovation project. Well, voted on in April and begun by now. Clearly that's been tossed into the hopper, but these are repairs to the school building itself, irrespective to some degree of whether people are going to school remotely or not. The building itself has to be maintained, as we're discovering with the high school. But these are mostly for the middle school, as I understand it.
All right, thank you, Fred. And the motion on this is ultimately, I believe, to transfer. Is that correct? Let me just. No, it's not. It is to raise and appropriate. So, okay. Any other questions on our 2O? 2P has been withdrawn. 2Q relates to the elementary school proposal for a sprinkler system. Chief Pauly, do you want to speak to this real quick? Chief, you got to unmute. Chief Pauly. He's working on it.
I'm trying. I'm really trying. Thank you, Dan. The bottom line is that when the addition was made to the middle school back in the mid-90s, the addition in the original building was required by the state building code to have a fire suppression, i.e. sprinkler system put into it. That was required because there was no municipal water system to supply that. Someone waived that requirement, which legally could not be done, but it was done. And I'm not sure, I don't know who that someone was.
It wasn't me.
No, the file's not thick on that issue.
No.
So we really need to protect that building. It's a treasure to the community. We've had some initial surveys done with it with the school department, and it's something that needs to protect the building and the people in the building. So it's unfortunate we have to go back and put it in retroactively, because it would have been much cheaper to do it way back during the construction and renovation. But it has to be done by state building code, and that's the bottom line.
Thank you, Chief. And again, it did pass at the ballot yesterday, but it's still, because it's proposing to borrow the money, it will require a 2/3 vote by town meeting to move forward. Questions on that, Fred? McGee?
Yeah, just to add to what Chief Pauly was saying, and I think he may have said middle school, it's the elementary school.
Yes.
The FinCom voted to reserve our opinion, and we'll be changing that vote tomorrow night, only because the original wording of the article was it was going to be a study. And we asked what was being studied at this late point, because to Chief Pauly's point, it's a mandate. It turns out it is in fact the engineering, and the wording of the article now is clear about that. So I have no reason to think that the FinCom won't reverse will vote to recommend tomorrow night when we meet.
Okay, and as soon as you have that information, if you could let me know so I can inform the voters before we act on it. The motions booklet will be because we won't have the slides to project the motions. Each voter will get a motions booklet, or each pair of seats at the least. Courtney is having those printed as we speak, or momentarily tomorrow, I guess. So everyone will have the actual wording of the motions in front of them. And I'm hoping that instead of reading the motions, we can just make the motions by saying, I move that article so-and-so be accepted and adopted, with the wording as printed in the motions booklet. So that makes it clear exactly what it is that's being moved. The voters have that information in front of them. And on this particular article, it does very clearly say, it doesn't say, actually it does say funding a study, but maybe that's been changed. And if not, I think we'll need to change it before town meeting. I'm just looking at the motion, but I might be looking at an earlier version of that. So Courtney, you and I might have to talk about that tomorrow. I might have to actually reword that.
Yeah, we'll look at it.
Yeah. That's not something I caught going through that. Any other questions on Article 2Q? 2T, the Lieutenant Island Road improvements, I believe that one did pass. Am I correct on that?
Yes, that one did pass.
Okay, and I think that's fairly straightforward. I don't know if the DPW wants to weigh in on this. They're proposing to do some work on Lieutenant Island Road, and again, that's a borrowing article, so that will require a 2/3 vote. The beach department portable repeaters. This is to maintain better communications on the beach.
Hey. Sorry, Dan. Somebody asked what the extent of this improvement to Lieutenant Islands Road is, and I can just read from the information that was on the town website really quick, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay. Lieutenant Island Road is the sole access point for the Lieutenant Island section of Wellfleet and is in dire need of repair. Significant cracking along and across the road surface at varying intervals has created an uneven surface that makes travel along the roadway unsafe, and the uneven surface makes snow removal difficult. The repair of Lieutenant Island Road will result in a significant improvement to the safety of residents and visitors. It does not specifically say which sections of the road, but you can certainly reach out to the DPW if you'd like to know. I don't see any of them on.
Well, that's again, that's by way of sort of giving a heads up to what questions are going to be asked. Let's let the DPW know that question was asked, so they come to town meeting prepared with an answer for that. Any other questions or comments on that? 2V, the beach portable repeaters. I think anybody that's tried to get cell coverage at the beach has a sense of why these might be necessary. Suzanne or Chief Pauly or Chief Hurley, do you anything you want to say about this?
Dan, real quickly, we have been struggling with radio communication from the lifeguards on the beach to fire dispatch. We did some testing as recently as 2 weeks ago with a repeater system that could be built. We found significant improvement with that repeater system. They're about $10,000 a piece for the 4 beaches from McGuire Landing up to Newcomb Hollow. And I think it will make a big improvement in emergency communication.
Okay, just by way of clarification, the summary in the warrant makes reference to cell phone capacity. Is this in fact for cell phones? I don't think so. It's for the emergency radios. Yes.
It is strictly radio communication for the lifeguards to fire dispatch or police dispatch.
Okay, I think that we should make that clear to the voters at town meeting, because I think if people are voting for that, thinking they're going to be able to use their cell phones at McGuire's, they're going to be sadly disappointed. So this is strictly for emergency radio communication. All right, thank you for that clarification. Any other questions on this article? Article 3 is the Marina enterprise budget. And each year at the enterprise fund, there are some funds that are transferred into this and some funds that are transferred out to help support the other town departments which give services to the Marina. That's true of both enterprise budgets, the Marina enterprise budget and the water enterprise budget. These are simple majority votes. Questions or comments on that? The capital improvement, again, this has been postponed a number of times. The Mass School Building Authority, from what I understand, is now giving towns until the spring town meeting to act on this without jeopardizing potential reimbursement. So this is something that we'll be coming back to in the spring town meeting. I hope by then we're going to be able to meet in the gym once again, but time will tell. Any other comments on this? Additional financial articles. These are to fund collective bargaining agreements that have been made. This particular one is with the WEA contract, Welfare Employees Association. The town meeting is required to, even though the select board negotiates these contracts with the various unions that represent the town officials, the town meeting is required to approve the first year of the contracts. Questions on that? And Article 7, we have an article similar to this every year. Just as the unions negotiate pay raises from time to time, similar raises are given to some of the non-union personnel, and the town meeting has to act on those individually since they're not included within collective bargaining units. Questions or comments on that? Article 8.
We do have a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For Article 6, what is the monetary amount associated with this article?
It's according to the motion. It's $130,814. That's the figure that I have.
Yep, it's right here.
Is that correct? Okay. So just under $131,000.
Okay.
The Article 8 was before the voters, and this was an override rather than a debt exclusion because these positions are going to be ongoing. This adds to the levy limit in order to be able to fund these positions. This is for 2 new firefighter, EMT, or paramedic positions. Chief Pauly, quick comment on this if you'd like.
Again, as the voters know, we've been struggling with staffing for the last several years, and the voters have been very, very supportive of what we've been trying to do, what we need to do, actually. We're down to 5 on-call positions. We need to increase the full-time staffing. Our goal is to get 4 people on each shift with a couple of daytime people to supplement that, and this just gets us a little closer to that with 2 more positions. And I'm anticipating that you'll only have to hear from me, I hope, no more than one more time on this type of request in terms of an override. This is what we need to keep 2 ambulances on the road, or an engine company fully staffed. And I just say that's one engine company. So again, this has been, the plan over the last 4 years. This is our 4th year.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions on Article 8? Again, this was approved by the voters yesterday's ballot. This is not proposing borrowing, unlike some of the other contingent articles, so that this will only require a majority vote from town meeting. Article.
We have one question. Sorry, Dan. Chief Pauly. The question is: are these salaries competitive with area towns?
They are on the lower side of competitive. We, in the last contract negotiations with the permanent firefighters, to the credit of Mr. Hort and the select board, we were able to move the salaries to be more competitive. But, we're into the second year of that contract and we're starting to slip a little again. So that's something we're going to have to address in the future, in the next year and a half. But we are on the lower side, mid to lower range of competitive.
Thank you, Chief. Other questions about this proposal?
Nope.
Okay, Article 9, Chief Pauly again. This is to fund a paramedic training program. Would you like to explain briefly?
Oh.
Just get unmuted.
God bless technology. So what we've initiated last year is we have a number of individuals that are firefighter EMTs. This was actually put forward last year by Jerry Huck when he was selectman, to try to give some incentive and assistance to fund paramedic training programs for our people. They'd have to be on the fire department as either a call person or a full-time person. The cost to fully train a paramedic just through the educational educational cost is approximately $10,000. So what we're trying to do here is provide some educational assistance to move some of our EMTs to the paramedic level, which would greatly provide better service to the community. So this may be an ongoing question for the next few years until we can, I hopefully get more paramedics into to that certification level.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions on this?
No, I'm not seeing any.
I think it came through the chat. Okay. Article 10 was question 1 on the ballot yesterday that did pass. Is there someone who's going to speak to this? I think Kurt Felix, were you going to speak to this?
Helen has her hand up as well.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I can provide a quick overview.
Do a quick overview and then we'll go to questions.
Sure. Basically, when the town hits a certain level of water usage overall, we need, under DEP regulations, to have a redundant source of water. So basically, the Boy Scout camp is the primary source of water, and the Coles Neck source is the secondary. We have 2 choices basically to upgrade the system to be able to provide, to basically make that water available to the entire town through the water main system. And the only way to do it is either replace the mains in the Coles Neck area and upgrade them to 8-inch, or run a new line down Route 6 up Briar Lane to connect into the main. In fact, the main reason for wanting to have that secondary source is to have redundancy. Should we lose the wells at either location, the second set of wells can supply the entire system, and we can't do that right now. In fact, in July, we had a lightning strike that did screw up one of the electronic control systems at the Boy Scout camp wells. The other well was able to continue to function, but it's just an example that if we actually lost that water source, we would not be able to supply the town. In particular, with the addition of the 95 Lawrence Road affordable housing, that additional load is actually what's pushing us over the sort of the state maximum, whereby we have to move into the secondary water supply. So we have a choice of either going down Coles Neck Road or going up Route 6 in Up Briar Lane. If we go down Coles Neck, we don't pick up any new customers. We would just simply be replacing that main and making the connection. If we go up Briar Lane, it's a little bit more expensive, about $100,000, but we in a almost $4 million total budget, there's very little difference between going up Briar Lane or going up Coles Neck Road. Going up Coles Neck Road, we pick up about 80 additional new properties that could benefit from town water. We pick up the ability to provide fire suppression along Route 6 and up Briar Lane, which we currently don't have. We'd be picking up potentially 7 commercial establishments, including 3 food service establishments. And the main establishment that I think is very important to voters in town is Outer Cape Health. And Outer Cape currently is on a well. Their well was moved several years back because it had nitrate problems. And there's some concern, although not right now, but there's some concern that in the future, that well may not meet state requirements from nitrate, and they would need a backup source. So it's sort of an insurance policy for Outer Cape. They certainly don't need it right now. But when you're doing infrastructure planning, that's not something you can really do or turn on a dime. The last thing about this particular article is that running up Briar Lane, we would be eligible for a grant that could cover the entire cost. Basically, there's an economic development grant that's available. We've got an application put forward now, and the likelihood of it succeeding depends on what you're doing with that in terms of economic development. It's called a Mass Works grant. Obviously, providing backup for Outer Cape and these other businesses and new customers on the water system really makes it a very, very attractive item for Mass Works. And we could potentially get this whole entire thing funded through that mechanism. So that's basically what's behind this article.
Hey, Kurt, I just real quick at the beginning, in the middle of that, you did say, I think you misspoke when you said going up Coles Neck Road, we'd pick up 80 properties. I think you did mean Briar Lane. Is that correct?
I meant Briar Lane. Sorry about that. Thanks, Dan.
I don't know if anybody else heard that. Helen has a question.
Yes, I have a question. And Kurt, I agree with everything you said initially about the redundant well and the 2 options for improving hydraulic flow, providing a decently functioning redundant well, and also that the statement, here comes the question, the statement that's in the warrant, the last sentence in the summary, you just contradicted. And I feel that I just want to confirm with you that the project of having new pipes laid up Route 6 in Briar Lane are not needed to enable the development of the housing development at 95 Lawrence Road. In fact, it could be done simply by, isn't it true that it could be done simply by replacing the pipes that are already in the ground with pipes with a wider diameter without adding lots of pipes that would have to be repaired, maintained over the years for hookups that aren't really necessary right now, given that we're looking down the barrels of having to deal with the septic waste from that whole area, including Briar Lane, shouldn't that come first? So my question to you is just to confirm that the last sentence in the summary, which reads, the project is needed to enable the development of the housing development at 95 Lawrence Road, is inaccurate. It's one way to help enable it, but it's not the only way.
Okay, I don't want to get too much into a back and forth debate here. If there's a simple answer to that question, Kurt.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's 2 choices, and I think I've laid those out.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, from my own curiosity, since I don't get to ask questions at town meeting, I do get to ask them here. Is there an estimate of the time frame of when the Coles Neck Road pipe would have to be replaced anyway?
I don't think we have a good estimate, Dan. Those are plastic pipes. there's more than adequate water capacity to continue to serve that. So its useful life, is pretty good. And, there's going to have to be maintenance and repair work done there. But at the end of the day, we either lay new pipes down, Coles Neck Road and get no customers and don't help any of the other businesses, or go down Route 6, pick up fire suppression and additional customers and businesses and provide a backup for Outer Cape with a much higher likelihood of getting that grant funded.
Okay, I think there'll be ample time to debate this on the floor of town meeting. I don't want to get too much into a back and forth here. I'm just looking for information.
I can answer the question, Danny, about the pipes.
Okay.
So there was a major repair that had to happen in North Wellfleet where the pipes came down to the road a few years ago.
Yeah,
But the second part of it is the normal life expectancy for pipes in the ground is about 30 years. That's the cycle. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Other questions or comments on Article 10?
No, but we have a question. If you could explain what debt exclusion and Prop 2.5 are called. The explanation, Ginny, just so you know, is in the beginning of the warrant. I believe it's on page 5.
Yeah, but I'd be happy to give a quick, at least
Sure.
my layman's understanding of this. Prop 2.5 limits how much the town can raise its property taxes. It's limited to raising them no more than 2.5% higher than they were the year before. There are a couple of caveats to that. If the valuation of the town goes up, that you get a little extra. But if budget proposals would kick you over what's referred to as your levy limit, there's 2 or 3 different ways of dealing it. The first that people normally think about are overrides. And what an override does is it raises that levy limit permanently. And that's what's being proposed to fund the 2 firefighter positions, because the firefighter positions presumably will not go away. So you need the extra revenue to fund those 2 positions. That's an override. A debt exclusion allows you to exceed the levy limit, but just for the life of the debt service. So if, for example, you're borrowing to do a project and you're floating a 20-year bond, the debt exclusion lasts for the 20 years that it takes to pay off that debt. There's a third one, which I don't think we use very frequently at all, and that's, I believe, a capital expenditure exclusion, and that would be a one-time exclusion for a major capital project. That's not something that we normally do, but simply because for any large project we have to usually borrow the money. So that's the difference. The debt exclusion, the two that we commonly see are overrides and debt exclusion. An override is a permanent raise to the levy limit, where a debt exclusion is just for the life of the borrowing for that project. I hope that's clear. I think it's pretty well explained in the front of the warrant. I hope that answers Ginny's question.
Thanks.
Any other questions on Article 10? Questions or comments? No. Article 11 through 16 are all community preservation projects that are funded by funding from the Community Preservation Act, which is a surtax on our property taxes. I'm going to make the suggestion to the town meeting that we consider these as a consent calendar, with the exception of Article 16. These are normally relatively non-controversial, so if the town meeting agrees, we can take one vote on I believe 5 or 6 of these together. I know that there are some questions about Article 16, so I'm not going to include that in a suggested consent calendar, but what I will do is ask the town meeting when we come to this if we can consider them and vote on them as a group. If somebody wants to talk about any one of them individually, obviously we can, and they're still debatable, even being taken as a consent calendar, but I'm thinking we might be able to save a little time. If it turns out that there are a lot of people who want to talk about one or another of these, that doesn't make sense, so we'll take them individually. For now, is there anybody that has any questions about Articles 11 through 15 or wants to make any comments on those? Helen? See your hand up? You got on mute.
I had a question about 16. I'm sorry.
Okay. Anything on 11 through 15? Any questions or comments on that? I think the explanations on them are fairly straightforward. Nothing in the chat, Courtney?
Nope.
Okay. Article 16, I suggest we take that. I know Selectman Curley had some questions about that. Helen, your hand was up first.
I'll let Ryan go first.
Okay. Brian?
So to those who haven't or weren't at the select board meeting where we addressed Article 16, we are concerned about the quality of the workmanship done. We have drafted a letter to the Cemetery Commission regarding it. I think it's been sent to the Cemetery Commission now. I'm not 100% sure.
It has been.
Okay. So there is a finalized letter from the select board to the Cemetery Commission addressing the issues that we felt needed to be addressed to them. And there will be, and just speaking personally now, and not necessarily as a select board member, so don't misrepresent anybody. I did submit, there will be a printout that's included for the town meeting so that people can see what some of the issues are, because that is probably the best way of explaining it to people. But the quality of the workmanship was not very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Helen, do you still want to comment?
Yes. Point of information. On Sunday at 1, there's going to be a site visit, select board site visit. I don't know if there's going to be a quorum at the Oakdale Cemetery, just to walk around and actually see things, not just see color Xeroxes, color copies. I'm dating myself, Xeroxes. Since then...
At least it didn't say mimeograph.
Yeah, really. So when this came up, the cemetery commissioners were told about it to invite them if they wanted to join us walking around outdoors. And I learned something that I did not know at the time. It was an oversight that this communication didn't happen, which is that the cemetery commissioners were also really not happy with the job that the contractor had done most recently. And that was the issue, at least for me, when I voted on the select board. And here, same as Ryan, I'm just speaking for myself. That was the reason I voted against this. Because I thought, how could they have let this happen? Well, in fact, it happened under their watch, but they were very unhappy with it. So that's just a fact that I think needs to be supplied here. It's not a question. I apologize.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on Article 16?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. Article 17 is to provide some funds so that the town is able to act quickly on any grants that might be available to them without having to wait for another town meeting. At least that's my understanding of what that's about. I think that's fairly straightforward. Questions or comments on that? Okay. Dick Elkin, did you want to say something on this? I think the Energy and Climate Change Committee was one of the proponents of this. Did I summarize it correctly?
Yes, Suzanne should speak to this. Suzanne Ryan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I saw Suzanne on the call. Hello, Suzanne. Could you unmute yourself? Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. All set. Well, specifically requesting funds for $50,000 for grant projects that the Energy and Climate Action Committee do in fiscal year 21. And specifically, these are projects for vulnerable roads, lawns, and vulnerable road areas that are at risk from storm surges or sea level rise. And we're looking to hire a engineering consultant to take a look at vulnerable areas. And then ensuing projects would include fixing the problems.
All right, thank you. So my understanding is that there isn't a specific grant that you're looking at right now, but you want to have funds available should grant opportunities come up. Is that correct?
I'm not going to really name the grantors, but we do have 3 projects.
Okay. I'm sorry, Suzanne, we're not hearing a lot of that. I think your internet connection is less than great.
Would like this funding for. It's matching funds. A lot of these government grants require a certain percentage, between 25 or up to 50% from a town in order to be eligible.
Okay.
It's not always the case, but a lot of times it is. So we would like to be prepared ahead of time.
Okay. I think that's clear. Your connection was very poor, so I'm hoping you can explain that again at town meeting if the questions come up. Okay,
sure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on Article 17? The next couple of articles, 18, 19, 20. I'm sorry. I guess it's just 18 and 19 are standard articles that we vote on every year. Chapter 90 road repairs. This allows the town to do road repairs in the expectation of reimbursement from the state. And other post-employment benefits, we've been working over the past number of years to try to catch up to the unfunded liabilities that the town has. And I think Wellfleet is probably in better shape than some other towns because we have addressed this. I don't know if anybody, Fred from the FinCom, or wants to address this, but I know the town has made appropriations to begin to address the longstanding unfunded liability, and I think the town's made a lot of progress on this in recent years. Questions or comments on these 2 articles?
There is a question about what percentage is Opeb currently funded?
I don't know the answer to that. Fred?
I don't either, but I'm writing it down to have it ready for town meeting.
Okay. Fred, do you know that figure?
No, I don't know that. My understanding is that we are better off than most of the towns on the Cape, but we're not fully funding OPEB. The number that, as I recall, the number from a couple of years ago that we fully funded was somewhere in the neighborhood of $400,000 a year. And our 250 is ahead of most other towns, but not necessarily fully funding it at the appropriate pace. But we still have quite a long time.
It's not 250, it's 100 in this year's budget.
Well, yeah, in this year's budget, we've pulled back. That's right.
Right. I think it has been 250 in some of the past years, but
that's right.
Yeah, it did come back a little bit this year.
This is an expedient for COVID.
Yeah.
Push some of the money into next year's budget.
Correct. Okay, and the Marina Enterprise Stabilization Fund. This is again, I think a standard transfer that takes place every year. Questions or comments on that?
Not seeing any.
Okay, and Article 21. We get receipts, I believe, from part of what people who have Comcast pay every month. Comcast is required by, I believe, it's by state statute and by the cable agreement that was negotiated with them to pay the town some percentage of what we pay them, and that's what funds the Lower Cape cable community access channel. So this is to transfer those receipts into the cable operations. Questions on that or comments? Okay. Article 22. This article is going to be moved in a slightly modified form. And Nancy Sabetta, I believe, is on the call. Nancy, if you'd like to explain.
Hi.
Hi there.
Let me just get rid of this. So this will be a recurring question every year at all town meeting. What will the town authorize the Shellfish Department to spend from its newly created revolving fund? The last year it was $5,000. We were just getting off the ground. This year, the town administrator suggested pulling $40,000 to fund our propagation budget, leaving only $6,000 to come from taxpayer dollars. And I'll just quickly back up and explain that the Shellfish Propagation Fund pulls 75% of the receipts from selling shellfish permits, both commercial and recreational, and all of the receipts that come in from the yearly grant payments, the lease payments that farmers, oyster and clam farmers pay to the town each year. So that money is collected by the town, and 75% of it now goes into this revolving fund that the Shellfish Department can use exclusively for propagation. 25% remains available to the select board to use to cover other budget expenses. But this is not coming from taxpayer dollars. It's coming from the receipts of people who use the resource, the shellfishing resources of the town. So given COVID and the fact that oyster farmers in particular, but the shellfishing industry in general, as many other industries, have been greatly affected this year by COVID. And there's the opportunity that I became aware of, that Barnstable County has a matching grant program where we could apply and get some money towards propagation programs, propagation efforts that we could undertake if the town had matching funds available. So, for example, there's a lot of fishermen, shellfishermen that might have surplus oysters on their grants because the orders have been nothing compared to the past. So we could buy those surplus oysters and then put them in recreational areas for shellfishermen. That would be a propagation activity that we could undertake as a town. And we need, I'd like to be able to have some money for this type of opportunity, but any other sorts of opportunities that might come up, like we did for the Channel Quahog relay program that we did this year when all the markets crashed in March, and we wanted to get the quahogs out of the channel before dredging started, and we were able to spend a little over $3,000 to pay fishermen when they couldn't sell the clams anywhere. The town bought them, and we put them again in the recreational areas so that recreational fishermen could harvest them. So we serve the purpose of getting those quahogs out of the channel so that they're not going to be going towards dredge spoils, and then also paid the fishermen, and were able to propagate important recreational areas. And that's a long way of saying that we are coming now and asking for an extra $10,000 to allow us to be nimble and help provide COVID relief to the shellfishing industry as opportunities arise, including the matching grant program from Barnstable County.
Thank you, Nancy. Any questions or comments on this? Questions for Nancy? I'm not seeing any.
Nothing in the chat either.
Okay. Article 23.
Is that clear? And that was clear. Okay.
Yes, that was clear. Yes.
Thanks, Nancy.
Maybe try to be a little faster at town meeting.
I will.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Try to ask people to be as.
Yep. Okay.
Was there a question on that? Yes.
Nope.
Nope.
She's up for the next one.
Next article. The next article is a petitioned article that proposes a general bylaw amendment. Christine, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, I did have some slides. I guess I misunderstood the pre-town meeting slides that I'd sent.
Are they not showing up right now?
Oh, yes, there they are. Thank you. So I'll just go through these quickly. This the plastic reduction in the last several years, starting in 2016 with the plastic bag reduction bylaw. This year, we're requesting your support for a commercial single-use plastic water bottle ban. On the next slide, you will see one back. There you go. The ban would be effective in September of 2021. And it applies to non-carbonated, unflavored drinking water and single-use plastic bottles less than 1 gallon in the town of Wellfleet. And there is an exemption for declarations of emergency affecting the quality of drinking water to residents or health emergencies such as we're currently in. Next slide. This can be, we probably all know this already, it's just a summary of the amount of the plastic pollution problem that is made up of plastic that's only used once for an average of 12 minutes. That's about half of the 300 million tons of plastic produced every year. We all know plastic's a human and environmental health hazard, creates toxic emissions. There are harmful chemicals that can leach into beverages. And in our area of particular interest, it kills millions of seabirds and marine mammals annually. Recycling obviously is not the solution. It's very unpredictable, it's costly, and most plastic water bottles do not get recycled. Also of note is that a 2018 study showed that 64% of sold bottled water sold is filtered tap water. Next slide. In terms of our alternatives, tap water is what we're pushing. It's the safest, it's cheapest, it's the best environmental choice. EPA tests regularly, and our town water, you can test results are available. Many people say they might not like the taste, but there are options with very low cost carbon filters that will enhance the taste. We have been working to install water bottle refill stations outdoors in Wellfleet. The only one we have outdoors at the moment is at Bakersfield, but there are ones that have been funded by a gift fund drive that will be installed at the Marina and at Town Hall, hopefully once the pandemic's over and we have clearance to install them. In terms of alternative products for businesses, which will obviously be affected by this, water is available in aluminum cans or glass bottles. Reusable metal water bottles can be sold, can be branded. And stainless steel water coolers, that bottom right, are a good solution for allowing customers to come in and refill their bottles. Next slide. In terms of what's going on the Cape and the islands, there are commercial bans of plastic water bottles that have been in effect for quite some time in Nantucket, and more recently in 3 towns on Martha's Vineyard. There are 11 out of the 15 Cape towns do have this ban on their warrant this year. Provincetown will be voting on September 21st. Truro will be voting on the municipal ban that we passed last year. East End is voting on the 26th, and Orleans has postponed it until spring. So we are asking for your support, and please vote yes on Article 23. That's it.
Thank you, Christine. I see Ryan has a question.
Yeah, it's just a really quick question, just for, I don't know, benefit. So we're currently in a state of emergency. Would the current state of emergency accept the use of single-use water containers, or would it still be still in force in this current state of emergency?
No, the exemption that is part of the article the ban will not be in effect during states of emergency or public health crises.
Okay, because it just says for the access of water, I believe, as the exception.
Yeah, so the full, I think that if we look at the article here, it's subsequent to a declaration of emergency at any level affecting availability of drinking water. Yes, that's true. That right now our drinking water is not affected, so it would not be in effect.
Okay, that's
at this point. I mean, when it clearly was, there have been things that Massachusetts has rolled back during the pandemic, and that was, use of reusable grocery bags and other measures. And there wasn't anything specific on water bottles, but if there were some reason that plastic water bottles were considered safer or other options were not available, then I presume that exemption could be applied. I'm not sure what the mechanism of that would be, though.
Just for the sake of argument, Christine, during this declaration of emergency, the filling station at Town Hall has been unavailable because Town Hall has been closed. So
that's correct.
I would hypothesize that that might be considered reasonable grounds for an exemption in such a situation.
Yeah, I'm just not sure how this language would apply, and if well, I guess you're right. There is an unavailability of refill stations, so presumably that.
Just a couple of other points on this. If you look at your if you look at the warrant article as printed in the posted warrant, it makes reference to the town manager. We don't have a town manager, so the way this article is going to be moved, it's going to replace the words town manager with town administrator. I believe I'm correct.
That's correct. And in the motion, we have that change listed.
Okay. And I know there was a discussion I had a discussion, I think, by email with you and Lydia as to whether or not you would be looking to delay the implementation and enforcement date if other towns have not adopted this, so as not to disadvantage merchants in the town if this was neighboring towns had not adopted that. Is that something that your committee is still considering?
Yes, we're definitely considering that. Eastham was the first last year to determine that they would resolve the concerns of some citizens and businesses about being the only town on the Outer Cape that passed a ban. And that was that at the subsequent Springtown meeting that they could extend the effectivity date for another year and continue to do so until neighboring towns were all on board.
Okay, so that option would be available to Wellfleet as well if it turns out that by the time we come to Springtown meeting, there are neighboring towns or other towns that haven't adopted this, that Wellfleet could vote at a subsequent town meeting to put off enforcement and implementation for another year or two at a time.
Absolutely. We just made the decision not to sort of say, well, we're not give people the feeling that we didn't expect it to be passed or that we might be in that situation, but that would definitely be the strategy if other Capes didn't pass it. And we will be the first town on the Outer Cape to vote on it. So we have to be able to set an example for the other towns.
All right. Other questions or comments on this? I don't see any hands up, and Courtney's anything in the...
Nope.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Christine.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Dan, for clarifying about the public water availability.
Well, again, I think none of these things are necessarily always completely cut and dry, and something that might not be obvious. I was making use of the refill station at Town Hall. Went out and bought a Brita because I couldn't get to Town Hall. I'm not sure the water is as good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah. The Article 24 is a bylaw amendment, and this is one that I suggested to the select board after last year's annual town meeting. I'm not the proponent per se, but last year we had the second night of town meeting. We decided to try starting at 6 o'clock, and it seemed to be a relatively popular choice. So I suggested to the select board that they bring this to town meeting. Because it's a bylaw change and not a charter change, it can be implemented quickly. And the language is such that we're not necessarily committing ourselves to a 6 o'clock start. The boldface language says unless otherwise determined by the select board, but essentially it would set the default starting time for town meeting to 6 p.m. instead of 7 p.m. So that's what this is moving forward. And I think part of the intent is to maybe give us a little more time to get town meeting business concluded in one session rather than two, without having to go really late at night when people get kind of cranky and impatient. So that's any questions or comments on this? Again, if there is the way that this is written, it does give the select board leeway to set a different starting time if there's reason to do so. All right, Article 25 is another proposed bylaw change, and this I believe is going to be moved in the form of a resolution rather than a bylaw. Am I correct on that?
No, it will be a bylaw, and Dick Elkin is here to speak to that.
Okay, Dick.
Thank you. This was a citizen's petition. The Energy Committee was not involved in creating it, but we do recommend it by a vote of 6-0. And to say a little bit about this, it was originally...
Can I interrupt you for a second? I have the tally as 6-1. Is that incorrect? Is it
6-1? I'm sorry, 6-1.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I misspoke. The motion will be slightly different than that. Instead of saying all offices and departments, we'll say all offices, departments, committees, and representatives of the town. That would include representatives on various committees. And the reason will be obvious in a bit. We all believe climate change is real, but I think we have to take action now. The essence of Article 25 is that we adopt this as a policy and begin acting on it rather than just paying lip service to it. So the article has two purposes. It was originally intended as sending a message to show our support. And in that sense, it could have been a resolution. I think all but one of the towns on the Cape have a similar item on their town meeting this fall or last spring. But it also provides guidance on how we should change our own behavior and comply with state law. So if we think that this is a message, then we should vote on it, because even if it's disallowed as a bylaw, which some people have suggested, the message would still be sent. But it's more than a message. We need to act. And there's a state law called the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2008, which has set a number of goals. It set a goal for 2050 that we have net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And it set a goal for 2020 that we be 25% below 1990 levels. That's an ambitious figure, but we've probably met it. Now, before the end of the year, the governor has announced that he will set the goal for 2030 and 2040. And probably they will be 50% below 1990 levels and 75% below 1990 levels. Both houses passed independent bills requiring those levels, so it's likely to be law. The importance of this article is that we should start acting and take it seriously. The reason this is important is that we are now considering a new regional high school, and it's not planned to have zero greenhouse gas emissions, even though it will last 50 years or more, which means that by the year 2050, when we are required to have zero emissions, this building will be out of compliance. So we need to start thinking now about all new buildings having zero greenhouse gas emissions, because we don't want to retrofit in the next 10 or 20 years, an expensive retrofit. So that's what the Energy Committee, that's why the Energy Committee has taken this position. We think the new regional high school should use ground source heat pumps and electric stoves so that they will meet the 2030, 2040, and 2050 goals. Otherwise, we're going to have an expensive retrofit under the current law. So that's the reason why we're supporting it.
Right. Thank you, Dick. Helen had a question.
Yeah, okay. I was the person who voted against this, not because of the content, which I fully support and then some, but because you're sticking it in the general bylaws, which will make it more binding, which is good. But it's referred to as a policy, and it has some binding language in it. To go back, can we go back to the motion, please? Wasn't what we just saw on the screen the motion?
Yes, this is it.
Yeah. So we've got some binding language in here. And policies, the select board has a set of policies. This is more than a policy. It's a kind of mandate to town staff and people that otherwise work for the town, like me, and people on boards and committees, to take measures. And there's a date in here, so it's time sensitive in a long story way, which is a good way. And this is not a policy. This could be a general bylaw, and that would be great. But I just took issue with calling it something it wasn't. The other route to have taken would have been to submit the language to the select board and to get them to make a select board policy. And we're supposed to look at select board policies. So my question is, whose language was this again, through you, Dan, to Dick Elkin? Who put this together?
I believe it was 360.org, and it's across the Cape. So we didn't write it. And I think they took the same set of articles, the same article, and put it everywhere.
But I mean, who is the petitioner?
I have it as John Cumbler, as one of them, and Michael Fisher. And I confirmed with John Cumbler today through the clerk's office that because we did ask if he would prefer this to be a resolution rather than a bylaw, and he said he would like to keep it a bylaw.
Okay, thank you. You've clarified it for me, and I just don't. I have seen confusion and difficulty result from putting something like this, putting regulations, bylaws, policies in places where they're not really supposed to go, or not supposed to go in that way. And
okay, Helen, I'm going to stop you because
thank you.
We'll have ample debate this on.
Can I say something to that? The state is using a similar approach in setting goals for 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years out in the general laws, and they have been upheld in court, by the way, in at least 2 cases. Now, whether you call it a policy or not, I'm not wedded to the name, but having it as a general goal without specifics is what the state has done. And essentially, that's what I think we're trying to do. Have these goals. I'm not wedded to the word policy. If you have better wording, you can suggest, Helen.
We can't really get into this right now, and we have to move the petitioned articles as they are written by the petitioner. We cannot change the language in them. So after this is taken up at town meeting, we can discuss further steps after that.
Yeah, the motion doesn't need to duplicate the language. That the petition, the wording of a petitioned article has to be on the warrant in exact form that it was petitioned. That does not mean that the motion could not vary slightly. So if there was, as long as it was within the scope of what the article was, if there was language that the petitioner would prefer to use, or if someone wants to make an amendment, I would have to make a judgment on the fly unless I had it ahead of time as to whether or not that change would be within the scope of the article. But it's not a given that the motion has to duplicate the
right. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, I misspoke. But we would need that sooner rather than later. This was another last minute change today. So
yeah. So okay. Any other questions or comments on this? I suspect we'll have more than enough time to talk about this at town meeting. Okay, Article 27 and 28. I know one of these was going to be withdrawn. I lost track of which
27
one.
Has
okay,
been.
27 is going to be moved for indefinite postponement. Bruce, would you like to give a real quick explanation of why that's going to take place? Bruce Herter from the Conscom.
Bruce, you need to accept the unmute. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
The Conservation Commission, in reviewing this recently, has decided that there's a conflict of interest. There are a number of small jetties in the area that they're going to be making decisions on. So if this is transferred to their care and custody, that there would be a conflict in making those decisions. I can have Debbie Freeman speak to it if you want, but we are the advisory committee and their decision is to not support it.
Okay, I don't know if they, given that, so your recommendation is for indefinite postponement. It's still up to the town meeting whether or not it wants to do that. I don't know if the select board tomorrow, as they're making some last minute changes, wants to look at their recommendation and reconsider it. That's up to them if they want to do that. But at the moment, that's going to be the recommendation of the Conscom. Questions or comments on that? Ryan.
So as it's written in the town warrant, it's not mentioning two issues with these parcels. Two of them are town landings. And I think that's important. It's important to inform the voters that they are town landings and not just Coastal Dune, Coastal Beach, and Barrier Beach. They're under Chapter 91 of Massachusetts General Laws. They're subject to Chapter 91, but they are town landings and they are access points to the water.
For those of us less familiar, could you explain quickly what Chapter 91 is, Ryan?
Chapter 91 it goes back to colonial laws. 1 second. Let me look.
Oh, it's essentially an access, rights of access?
Yeah, it covers all use of public waterways. It's a very extensive chapter. It includes, things such as aquaculture to boat landings, to seawalls and revetments. Let me look up the exact name of the chapter.
Well, I don't know if we need to go into too much detail. Okay. Maybe, if you want to be prepared for town meeting, this needs an extensive explanation. It sounds like, that you might be in agreement with definitely postponing this. Whether the rest of the select board is or not, I'm not sure, but In any case, it is ultimately up to the town meeting whether it's moved for indefinite postponement or not. If the town meeting wants to consider this, they can vote that down. Other question, Helen, would you like to ask a question about this?
Yeah, or point of information, a little bit like what Ryan just did. Let's not forget that Conservation Commission has jurisdiction over this, whoever's in charge of it, whether it's the select board, the town, or a section of the town, which is CONSCOM. It's within their jurisdiction, so it's protected without giving it over to them. The only difference is that the CONSCOM, if it took it into its custody, right, wouldn't sell it. But the fact that it's a public landing and where it is makes the idea that it would ever be sold by a bunch of rogue select board members really, really doubtful.
Well, select board can't sell it without approval of town meeting.
No, that's right, but they can get it to town meeting. Anyway, in any case, that's the only difference, and CONSCOM has say over it, whether or not, whoever's in charge of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred McGee, you had a question?
Yeah, I just did a quick look up here. It's called the Massachusetts Public Waterfront Act, and its basic principle is to ensure that, going back nearly 2,000 years in principle, that the air, sea, and shore belong not to any one person, but to the public at large.
You mean 200 years, not 2,000 years?
No, it says 2,000 years in the act.
Does it really?
Yeah, that there are principles going back that far, not that the act itself is 2,000 years.
Interesting. Yes. Bruce? Bruce heard the comment?
Yeah, just a couple of points to make. One is the other advantage to going into CONSCOM care is that all the properties that do get evaluated at least once a year, and the open space and Doug and Hillary are involved with that, but we go and we do make sure that there's no dumping, et cetera. The other thing is that if Ryan's point is that should have been mentioned, that's fine. I do believe that some of the landings are in CONSCOM care. Certainly Old Wharf, which is used as a landing, is. So the fact that it's under conservation doesn't mean that it can't also be a landing, is my understanding. In either case, our recommendation, the CONSCOM is elected not to take this, and we are following their recommendation. There's no other choice.
Okay. With who put this forward initially, Open Space or CONSCOM?
Open Space brought it to CONSCOM, and the reason was that there was a boat that was on there. The dunes, I think we're all in agreement, are very important to the town, and the thought that the dunes and the grasses were being abused made us want to move forward with it. But the more CONSCOM thought about it, I think they felt that there was a conflict of interest here, so we are removing it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Open Space has something different to say at town meeting. That's their prerogative. Any other questions on Article 27? If not, Article 28, a similar proposal. This one is supported by all of the relevant committees, with a couple of exceptions. Questions or comments on that, Helen, on this one?
Yeah, the difference between these properties and Kendrick Avenue is that CONSCOM's going around once a year and checking is a very, very good thing in this location, which is not right out there past all the time on Kendrick Avenue and under the eyeballs of the whole community. And CONSCOM's vigilance can catch things that may or may not be in compliance with anything in these relatively remote areas, even though there's a lot of shellfishing along there. There are a certain number of people, and there are people that live up on the scarp.
Okay, so you're talking about Article 28, which is along Black.
Yes, it's the scrutiny that CONSCOM can supply. Bruce put it very well. Thank you.
Other questions on this one? Questions or comments? I don't see any.
Nope.
Okay, Article 29 is an easement required. Somebody is asking for an easement so they can maintain their water line, I believe, even though it refers to a sewage disposal system. But my understanding is this just has to do with a water line coming from a well. Am I correct on that?
That's my understanding.
Yeah. But it does authorize someone to do something with town property, so it requires a 2/3 vote. Just for informational purposes, the warrant article makes reference to a sketch which was inadvertently omitted from the finished warrant booklet. So that sketch will be included in the motions booklet that Courtney is having printed. I'm not sure it enlightens us a whole lot. It's a septic plan, and I don't think having that attached sheds an awful lot of light on what's being asked for. But because the warrant article does make reference to it, will be included in the motions booklet. I think we're looking at
This is it. If you can figure it out.
a 30-year-old septic plant. I don't know really what that has to do with water lines, but nevertheless, there it is. Questions or comments on that? Article 30 was originally going to ask the town to accept High Toss Road as a town way. In discussions over the past week with town council, turns out that there were some flaws in the process that was required before this can come to town meeting. So my understanding is this article is going to be moved for indefinite postponement. I believe that the proposal had something to do with clearing up the title to this road as one of the many pieces of the puzzle that is involved with the Herring River project. But because there were certain procedural steps that had to be taken that warrant the article is not really properly before town meeting at this point. So it's going to be moved for indefinite postponement, is my understanding. Helen, would you like to make a comment on that?
Yeah, and I have a question. So I spent, as I usually do, most of today in a day-long meeting for the Herring River technical team. And you said town council said something about this. I'm not sure that they know about this yet.
They do. I talked to Carol Ridley and she said she would alert the technical team.
Okay, good. Thank you. My comment on this is, just so you know, it's basically a housekeeping article, and it's a shame that this wasn't done properly because it has to do with securing funding for the Herring River project. It's not an article which would change the use of the road. That happens or doesn't happen in another set of events. But clearing the title on it is essential. So, okay, that's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah, Dick.
Thank you.
Dick, you have a question or a comment? Dick Elkin?
Yeah, I was under the impression that this road would be partly flooded under the project because the abutters came before the Cape Cod Commission vehemently upset about the fact that this road would be underwater, this section of this road.
Can I answer that, Danny?
Yes, please do.
That's inaccurate. In other words, some of that road is going to be raised. There are going to be parts of the road that will be raised. This is about something else. It's about making sure that the road is owned by the town so that it can be raised without the park and the town having to do it piecemeal in a crazy way that would be much more complicated. That's the short version. Say thank you for me doing, the short version.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Helen.
You're welcome, Courtney. But the point is that it's about being able to raise the roads and to have this happen in a friendly way with the park. It's a version of a friendly taking. And the park is into it, and we're into it, and we want this all to happen well. Thank you.
Well, I think somebody dropped the ball on the procedural piece of it, and presumably will come back to us on Springtown meeting. Any other questions or comments on this one? All right, Article 31 is authorization for the Municipal Housing, Affordable Housing Trust. Somebody wanted, I think the explanation is fairly clear on this. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question or make a comment on this?
I know Elaine is on. I don't know if she.
Yes, Elaine, do you want to speak to this briefly?
Okay, I do think the explanation is pretty clear, but we have had an affordable housing trust by special legislation since 2005, which was a wonderful thing for the town to do. But since then, the state has put forward their own version of an affordable housing trust. And more importantly, in 2016, they updated it and linked it with the Community Preservation Act, which is one of the main funding sources for a lot of affordable housing trusts. And one of the main reasons we want to change is because it expands the people involved in the trust. It will give a greater representation across the town for the trust. And it will also then enable the trust to use funds to, quote, support affordable housing, which our current trust doesn't do. And one of those big things is rental assistance, which has been a 10-year successful program under the Community Preservation Act, but this will also allow some of the donations that come into the trust fund to be used for this purpose too.
All right, thank you, Elaine. Questions for Elaine on this? Questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none. Article 32 is a resolution that would put the town on record as requesting a change to the seal of the motto of the Commonwealth. Just one thing I noticed looking at this in the warrant, it leaves the name of the town blank, and I don't see the name of the town included in the draft motion, unless, like, again, I'm looking at perhaps an earlier version. Courtney, is the name of the town of Wellfleet included in the motion now?
Let me see.
Yeah, it just says
no.
Printed in the warrants. I think we're going to need to address that, and because as printed in the warrant, it does not have the town's name in that. So we can talk about a way of resolving that missing piece of information. Questions or comments on that? This requires a simple majority vote. It's expressing the will of town meeting, or the general opinion of town meeting. All right. And the last several articles are standard articles that we vote on every year as a consent agenda. We authorize the sale of personal property. There is none. There are none right now. We authorize the town collector to use any whatever means of taxes that the treasurer can use when they're appointed collector. We assume liability for work done on behalf of the town by the state. And finally, that we allocate the school budgets on the basis of population rather than according to the formula of the state. And this is actually quite beneficial to the town of Wellfleet. All four towns have to vote on this every year, and happily all four towns recognize the basic equity of apportioning the school cost on the basis of population rather than the state formula, which would be disadvantageous to Wellfleet. So those are generally acted on as a consent agenda. And then finally, under the standard closing articles are where I make appointments. In town meetings, annual town meetings in the past, we've also conducted a giveaway for beach stickers, but it's a bit late for that, so we won't be doing that at this meeting, but maybe by next spring we'll be back to a more normal situation. So that's happily we've got through this in the 2 hours that the forum usually allots for this. Are there any other questions? Anything anybody wants to go back to? If not, thank you all for attending.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Helen.
Yes.
Okay, Helen.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So back on the water article, the Article 10, we didn't see the actual motion, and my memory is that we didn't get the actual sum that's being asked for. It's not printed in the warrant. Could we look at that in the motion just briefly?
Yep.
It's 3 million something.
3,843,438.
Thank you. That's
You're welcome.
all.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen. Any other questions? If not, I will say thank you to the forum for sponsoring this. Thank you to Courtney for hosting and managing the technology associated with this. I think when we get to town meeting on Saturday, I think we'll all be glad that we're doing this live rather than via Zoom. I think we're all about zoomed out at this point. I know I am. As I say, the setup is looks very good. The tent company set up the tent today. The vendor who's providing the audio system was there, and he's quite confident that we'll be able to hear everyone quite clearly. He's proficient at this. They did the Orleans town meeting, and he's bringing a variety of different speakers and equipment. So I think everyone will be able to hear the proceedings. The weather looks good, and I'm looking forward to a rather unique experience for town meeting. So thank you all, and that's it for me. Thank you to the forum.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night. See you on Saturday.
Good night, Courtney. Good night, Danny.